Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Heilemann. And I'm Mark Halperin, and with all due respect to Chris Christie, you're caught in the middle of the biggest showdown in your state since that cylindrical meteorite landed in Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
A fitting celebration for Orson Welles' 100th birthday. Meanwhile,
thank you, Charles Osgood.
In the war of our world tonight, Hillary's imperfections, Robbie Mook's objections, and yield British elections. But first, the Iowa projections. A new Quinnipiac Hawkeye State poll shows that Marco Rubio is a rising star and Jeb Bush is far, far away. Rubio has tripled his support from 4% in February in Iowa to 13% today, while Bush has lost half of his support, down from 10% in February to 5% today, margin of error, blah, blah, blah. This is all part of a growing sense in the political world that Jeb is the money king. Scott Walker is strong in Iowa. He leads that poll. But, John, is Marco Rubio now effectively the front runner for the Republican nomination?
No, he's the guy with the hot hand, and he could be a front runner real soon. It's hard to call anybody a front runner who's not leading in any poll in any state or any national poll. But he's got the momentum right now. He's on the rise. Walker is petering out. Bush seems to be collapsing. I don't know if that's real or not, but Marco Rubio is the guy who's soaring, and his positive rating is so strong. I look at those positive negatives, the favorabilities, more than I look at the horse race anyway, and that's where Marco Rubio is really showing up strong.
He's not the front runner, but here's what he does have. We talked previously on the show about the fact that he is kind of the face of the future of the party, hard to attack him. The other thing he has is everybody thinks now that he can be in the game for the nomination, and probably will be. There are people who say that Walker won't stand up. There are people who say that Bush won't stand up because of the Bush name. Most everybody agrees that if Rubio survives the scrutiny, that he will be in the game. And that's a strong place to be, even though, as you said, no obvious state where he's strong right now.
It's true. And again, I'll go back to my favorable, unfavorable thing just to get the numbers on there. 69% unfavorable, favorable, 9% unfavorable. Those are numbers you would sell your mother to get if you were running for president. The question
and he's just starting to spend time in Iowa.
Yes, and obviously there's some announcement bump here. But look, that face of the future thing, very powerful. My question for you, though, in the middle of this question, the larger question, is like, what's going on with Jeb Bush? If these Quinnipiac numbers are right, he is falling apart in Iowa. We'll see about other states, but what's the explanation for that?
He's spending his time raising money. Yeah. Within a month or so, or maybe 2 months, he'll be in this race, and he'll be spending more time with voters. But he is just still thought of as a Bush in the past, and I think he needs a lot more time on the ground in Iowa. He's going to have to wow. There's a big dinner coming up in a couple weeks with a lot of candidates. He's going to have to wow at that.
I asked one of the smartest Republicans we know about this today, who just literally said, Cruz announcement, Paul announcement, Huckabee announcement, let off all the announcements. Where's Jeb's announcement? All these guys are getting a bump, and a lot of people getting out in front of Bush in the announcement sweepstakes has really hurt him, I think. I mean, it might end up work out well for him, but right now, the fact that he's not out there in a public way as a candidate is bad.
Watch him to give a speech in the coming weeks showing more of his heart in a way that I think people will begin to think of him anew.
Okay. We'll test out all of these cockamamie theories of ours on Monday when we release a new Bloomberg Politics St. Anselm, New Hampshire poll. Can't wait for that. But for now, it's time for some Robbie Mook.
Mook, like look.
Like look, book, and took, and crook. No, cook. Last night in Vegas, Hillary Clinton set out to reinforce her bona fides with Hispanic voters, telling an audience at Rancho High School that she backs nothing less than, quote, full and equal path for citizenship for undocumented immigrants. This morning, the Clinton campaign manager, the aforementioned Robbie Mook, visited the Squawk Box crew on CNBC, armed with two things, a fabulous haircut and a charged talking point about the Republican candidates' positions on immigration.
She made this a defining issue in the election. And there is a very clear contrast that she drew yesterday with the Republicans. Not one of them has clearly and consistently, the way she did yesterday, supported a path to citizenship that is full and equal. You see some of the candidates waffling. You see some of them supporting basically second-class citizenship, and that's not enough.
Mark, I'm looking about Robbie Mook. He's on my mind. Big move by Hillary Clinton. Political masterstroke to lock down the Hispanic base, or could this backfire?
I don't think it'll backfire. She's moving fast and hard, and she's a freight train on this issue, in line with not just the Hispanics in this country, not just with her own party, but with the business community, religious community, etc., with a lot of Republicans, with the heart of Jeb Bush and the heart of Marco Rubio. Republicans today were loath to criticize her, with the exception of Scott Walker.
Yes.
The RNC criticized her in a way that didn't make any sense. I think she is so smart to get out in front of this in the state that is not just important for her in the nomination fight, but in the general.
And here's, you mentioned that the Republicans were loath to criticize her. Apart from Scott Walker, dead silence from every other Republican candidate, even the ones who are harshest on immigration, not attacking her. They know that in the end, if they can't get right with the Hispanic vote, there are not enough white votes out there.
Like Jeb Bush says, it's got an extraordinarily nuanced position. I'm for a path to citizenship, but that's not politically possible. So now I'm for a path to legalization. She is putting down big marks on this that will help her if she's the nominee in a big way, and it helps her now because it shows she's being decisive. All right. On the other hand, the Clinton rapid response team was plenty busy today, thanks to a trifecta of headlines. Headline number one: Bill Clinton's reply in Morocco to questions about his family's foundation. In a new CNN interview, 42 took a direct shot at the book that has been causing the House of Clinton so many headaches. Also today, in Marrakesh, a Clinton Foundation supporter pushed the former president to explain the nonprofit's response to the media in the face of all these allegations.
I was amazed because I started to watch the news, the Fox and other guys, and none of those people asked a question what this foundation is doing actually. I didn't see anybody from the foundation standing up and really have a go at that. What is the problem?
I just work here. I don't know. Look, there's one set of rules for politics in America and another set for real life, and you just have to learn to deal with it. Even the guy that wrote the book apparently had to admit under questioning that he didn't have a shred of evidence for this. He just sort of thought he'd throw it out there and see if it'd fly.
Well,
and it won't fly.
All right, that's the foundation. But headline number two in Clinton world: a top State Department official testified on Capitol Hill today that Hillary's use of a private email account for government business, not so good.
I think the message is loud and clear that that is not acceptable.
Okay. All right, so that's number two. Number three, Senator Bernie Sanders, Vermont, took a jab at the Clinton 90s while introducing a bill that would make it possible to break up banks that are too big to fail.
And I was one of the leading opponents of the efforts of Alan Greenspan, Robert Rubin, and Larry Summers, who all told us how wonderful it would be if we deregulated Wall Street back in the 1990s.
Fans are not saying Ernie, they're saying Bernie. John, of all these three things that happened today, which one is actually the worst news for Hillary Clinton's presidential prospects?
You know, Mark, that I have been tough on the Clintons on the email thing, and I've been tough on the foundation thing. And I think those are big, lingering problems for her. But I think that guy, Bernie Sanders, and what he represents is actually the biggest problem for her right now, because he is hot right now. He'll never be the Republican nominee.
Or the Democrat nominee, either one.
He'll not be either nominee. He'll never be president. But he represents this yearning in the party to have a challenge to her and discomfort with a lot of the things she stands for and the things that she's done. And that is a problem that's going to make this nomination fight harder and more complicated for her than she wanted it to be.
Now we enter the disagreement zone, because I will say that the worst thing today was with Bill Clinton's performance. He's continuing to talk about these issues in a way which is not putting the things to rest. And it is spooking some Clinton supporters who say, yeah, he's in Africa, yeah, he's distracted. But if we're going to get through this stuff, we need Bill Clinton's magic. We need the Bill Clinton juju to be out there talking the owls down from the trees and the problems to go away. And he, for a second straight time, speaking out, not doing it.
You know when Bill Clinton is not going to be on his best form is when you see him lying the way he did just now. He did that thing he does where he mischaracterized with Peter Schweitzer, who's got a lot of problems, Peter Schweitzer, right? But when he said this thing, he admitted he had not a shred of evidence. Well, he's never admitted that. He said he had no evidence of a quid pro quo. That's a different thing, and that's a Bill Clinton tactic we've seen before when he's not on firm ground. Oh, James, shut up. All right. Let me finish my point. Now for my easiest transition of the day. From a group of cutthroat, rule-bending, win-at-all-cost egomaniacs who play politics to a group of, you know, all those same things, who play football. A report commissioned by the NFL says Patriot quarterback and cover boy Tom Brady was, quote, at least generally aware, end quote, that a couple of the guys working for his team were more likely than not deliberately deflating footballs before the AFC title game. No one is surprised, and neither, we guess, is President Obama, who hosted the Pats at the White House 2 weeks ago.
I usually tell a bunch of jokes at these events, but with the Patriots in town, I was worried that 11 out of 12 of them would fall flat.
Mark, I have two questions for you. One, the first question, on a scale of 1 to Godzilla, how surprised are you by this revelation? And two, more importantly, should the Patriots now be forced, compelled, to give back the Vince Lombardi trophy?
I'm not that surprised, so I would say on a scale of 1 to Godzilla, count me as -5. Look, they get to keep the trophy because the league let them get away with this. All the other teams were silent. It's too late to take it back, but it's ridiculous. And in a league that's got some credibility problems, they should have stepped in at the time. Now it's too late.
I think, obviously they will not be compelled to give the trophy back, but it is the case.
Or should they be?
But it is the case, though, that this Super Bowl victory will always be tainted because there will always be a question. That AFC title game was close. Nobody knows what it affected, but everyone will always think of this is the Super Bowl that the cheaters won, and it will never be seen as totally
as a son
legit.
of New England, I can say whatever. We don't care. We won.
Well,
I mean, the Patriots, they cheated better than the other teams, and the league should be ashamed for not punishing them at the time. This investigation could have taken 2 minutes, and I look forward to hearing what Tom Brady has to say about it. But they won, and they'll keep it, and they should.
I'm telling you, this is a blight on Tom Brady's reputation and another blight on Bill Belichick's.
It's all the league's fault. All right, finally tonight, we remember a pioneer, Jim Wright, who represented his Fort Worth district in Texas for 34 years and became the Speaker of the U.S. House in 1987, has died in a nursing home at age 92. Wright was a distinguished World War II veteran, but he also was the first Speaker to be forced out of office while serving his term, and the circumstances were not pretty. He was charged with 69 ethics violations, including allegedly taking gifts from a developer. In 1989, Wright announced his resignation in a speech on the House floor, railing against, quote, this manic idea of a frenzy of feeding on other people's reputation. Speaker Jim Wright can rest now knowing not much in Washington or our politics has changed. And he kind of set it all off.
Let's not forget who brought him down. Newt Gingrich. This was the first big scalp that Newt Gingrich got on his own way to the speakership.
And his own ethics problems.
And his own ethics problems. And as you say, it really was the beginning of the age of polarization and acrimony that we now live in.
Great record of service in the military and also a crafty Paul.
Yes, indeed. Okay. We talked about the scandal in New England. After the break, Old England. And the race of a lifetime, sort of. John Micklethwait, our man with all the answers, will be here when we come back. Our guest tonight is a wee bit new to our company, so we are planning to go easy on him. John Micklethwait, formerly the editor-in-chief of The Economist, now Bloomberg's editor-in-chief. Thanks for coming on the show. It's a huge week across the pond in the UK. And a lot of names are getting thrown around in the news. So let's talk about them. Charlotte, Elizabeth, Diana. Just kidding. That's our attempt at British humor with a U. Seriously, John. Let's talk about the elections tomorrow. The British people appear not to have a consensus about who should lead them. We want to talk about the personality of those possible leaders. Let's start with the current Prime Minister, David Cameron, someone in your time at The Economist I know you got to know well. Tell us about what David Cameron's like and about his prime ministership, what has brought him to this point of great peril.
Well, Cameron is very calm, very good under pressure. After the last election, there was a moment nobody had an overall majority. He was incredibly good at dealing with that. Sometimes that very kind of slick management drifts into complacency. And one of his problems in the election is that he's surrounded, frankly, by lots of people who look and talk like me. And strangely, that is not necessarily...
That is a problem.
That is not necessarily something which the British public warned to. And he's slightly given the impression, not wholly accurately, that government is one of those things you do with your chums, and that's the way it works. That's not wholly fair on him. He's good at taking tough decisions in some places, and he's good at getting himself out of holes, a bit like Bill Clinton.
Do people think that he has been on the merits of what he promised to do 5 years ago and what he's delivered? Do people think he's been successful, or do they think he's fallen short in terms of delivering on those promises?
It's the really odd thing, is in terms of has he done what he said he'd do? Yes, pretty much. He promised it would be hard. He promised he'd fix the economy. He's done that, and if you ask the British people who's the better leader, they go to David Cameron. If you say, what's your main issue, they say the economy. Who's better on the economy? David Cameron. So that's, if you looked at it from the outside, you talk to a lot of American pollsters, they just say, surely Cameron's going to pull away. He's passing all the tests you would expect an incumbent to pass, but he's not breaking through.
So the man who's poised to maybe stop him, the Labour leader, Ed Miliband, is part of a political family very familiar to the country for a long time. Is he someone running on personality? Is he running on issues?
it's interesting. He's running on something, a kind of version of inequality, a version of sort of fairness. And he has gone out and he has selected a kind of consortium of people. It's in a very strange way. It's a bit like Karl Rove years ago assembling the Bush coalition. He's gone off and found individual people. He's gone and grabbed students. He's promised them things. He's told pensioners you're going to get this. He's told people unemployed you're going to get this. Benefits, people who work for the public sector. And he's sort of got a blocking coalition together, and that is the way that he's been going, and he's continually attacked Cameron, that he's someone who's out of touch with the people. And in a strange way, the first sort of beginning of the campaign, Miliband did very well. Recently he's got into trouble about this thing to do with the Scots Nats, but he's not personally popular.
Scots Nats being the Scottish National Party.
Yeah. We've seen past British elections where one of the two major candidates was clearly more likable. It's not clear to me, from my own point of view or from the British people, who's more likable between the two of them?
The really odd thing is, in British politics, all the most likable people are the people outside. People liked Alex Salmond in Scotland. They quite like Nicola Sturgeon, the new SNP leader. They love Boris Johnson. Nigel Farage, the UKIP guy, has a kind of blokish image. The two people at the top, people don't go for. What's really odd about this election is that we had Britain, which was a place where you just thought it was two parties, one gets elected, one doesn't. Now suddenly you have everything reversed and you have everything turned upside down. Labour is based in Scotland. Scotland is where it comes from. In this election they could lose pretty much every single Scottish seat they have, and yet Miliband could end up in Downing Street. And that is like Hillary Clinton losing New York and California but still carrying the election, and it is very, very odd.
Say a little bit more about Ed. You know, one of the things that people don't, or most people don't follow British politics don't know, is that he has a brother who also wanted to be Prime Minister or leader of the Labour Party. He had to kind of shove his brother aside in order to be in the position he is now. That speaks to a certain kind of coldness and a ruthlessness that doesn't necessarily come across in his public persona.
I saw his brother's in New York. I saw him a couple of days ago in a restaurant. He is stuck in a very strange position. David Miliband was the chosen Miliband.
Yeah.
He was also Blair's chosen heir. And during all those times of Gordon Brown, a sort of slightly dysfunctional leader, whenever there was a plot, it was always about bringing in David Miliband. And then the moment the election went, suddenly he was pushed out. Yeah. He was pushed. There was a race, and everyone expected Ed Miliband to support his brother, instead of which he ran against him. And it is really Cain and Abel. And actually that's a problem for Ed Miliband. If you ask voters what do they know about him, the first thing they know is that he knifed his brother.
Outcome have any implication for the United States?
I think it must do, because Britain, whatever its pluses and minuses, is still an incredibly close ally. It's still the people you'd rely on in terms of defence. Cameron hasn't been spending enough on it. Miliband looks as if he spend even less. There's the whole issue about Britain and Europe. You know, whatever happens, you could end up with Britain at the worst. You could see Britain coming apart. You're either going to end up in this election, if the polls are right, with Cameron governing in London, but with no support whatsoever in Scotland, and Scotland run by the Scots Nats, or else Miliband governing in London with the help of Scottish MPs, the Scottish nationalist MPs, who English voters have no control over. The Scots can vote on English issues, the English can't vote on Scots. And so you will have growing resentment, growing fury in England about what's happening, because England gives Scotland a lot of money.
Growing fury,
so there's quite a lot of
it's a nasty thing. A lot of hilarity.
Right. Yes, it could be.
Let me ask you a last question. We have about 30 seconds. If you think about these two guys, the likelihood is, like if we believe the betting sites and Ladbrokes, that we're going to have a hung election. There's no one's going to have a majority government. So which of these two guys has the political resourcefulness, the more likely, have the political resourcefulness to have the likelihood of being able to cobble together a coalition government?
Most people would probably still say Cameron, because he did it before. What Cameron has, he has a very good ability to lose something, think, OK, that's happened, I've lost my vote on Syria, I didn't get a majority in the election, and then do something quickly. Against that, everyone who underrated Ed Miliband, you see, I say the wrong Miliband by instinct, everyone who underrated him, you know, he is now quite close, or stands a decent chance, a far better chance than anybody thought, of getting into number 10.
All right, John Micklethwait, our boss, our friend, thank you. Next time you come on, we're going to abuse you a little more thoroughly. When we come back, the Clinton campaign high command revealed.
Big day in Clinton land, as we said earlier today. Hillary, Bill Clinton in Morocco talking about the foundation. State Department official saying she shouldn't have used private email in effect. And over at BloombergPolitics.com, we've got a little bit more from Hillary Land, who's really in and who's really out as part of Hillary Clinton's initial inner circle. Joining us from Los Angeles, where she's covering Hillary Clinton's West Coast fundraising trip, our reporter on the Clinton beat, Jen Epstein. Jen, the story we have up on the site now that you and I did about the Clinton campaign is based on a memo that lays out their conference calls for their strategy calls, their management calls. Tell everybody what struck you most about who's included, who's not.
Well, really what we could see from this memo was a sense of some of who matters and who doesn't at this moment in time. And a lot of the names are to be expected, people like Robbie Muck, the campaign manager. But there are also a couple of people who were striking because they're longtime Clinton hands, and there's been a lot of energy around, let's make sure that we don't have all these old people who've been part of what's gone wrong in the past. But those people are all there, or a couple of those people are there. Mandy Grunwald, the ad maker and media consultant, and Huma Abedin, who's the vice chair, is kind of the right-hand woman for Hillary. She's on this daily call that's not quite happening on a daily basis, but is happening frequently enough that it's kind of one of the things stitching together the whole campaign.
Mark, you and I have both been struck by this. If you go back to '92. The only names on this list that have been written throughout on the list, Mandy Grunwald, John Podesta, nobody else. I wonder whether the tension of 2008, which was the 1992 crowd with the 2008 crowd, will that tension dissipate, or will this just enhance it?
It seems to be a pretty collegial group right now. What's fascinating to me about the list is these two lists is there's almost no names on there that would stun people that they're involved, but it really does tell you who is at the starting lineup at this, at the beginning of the season here for this campaign, who is on these calls, and it's an interesting mix. More men than women, more new people than old people, and a lot of Obama people.
Right, very new school and very Obama. Jen, I want to ask you, of all those Obama people, are they fully integrated, do you think, at this point? Is Joel Benenson, Jim Margolis, are those people really going to be running this show, or are they just for show in the sense that she wants to look like she's learning from the Team Obama method?
I think that there is an acknowledgement that she really did have to do more than just show that she's learning from the Obama people, but actually learn from them and do what they thought would be what they think would work for her, and that is really something that's a difference and it's a change. And it's been clear from some of the conversations I've been having just while I've been out here that there was really a very strong sense last year of you need to learn from the Obama team, you need to embrace them as much as you possibly can, but you also need to not pay attention to the people who are not going to be relevant anymore. People like David Plouffe who will say, I'm out of this now, and to instead focus on the people who continue to be part of the day-to-day people like Benenson and Margolis.
Okay. Jen Epstein, thanks so much. We appreciate it. And coming up, we'll have what's coming up after this. Our guest tomorrow from Iowa, where I'll be, Carly Fiorina.
And just a reminder, we don't just thrive at 5, we're also great at 8, and you really ought to let us set the bar on your DVR.
Thanks for watching. Sayonara.